Hey, hey, hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. Life can change in the blink of an eye. Sometimes it just hits you. Today on rSpace, you can't control everything, but maybe that's the point. Lightning struck my cheating girlfriend and her affair partner when they went hiking. I, 28 male, met Sarah, 26 female, at my buddy Alex's housewarming party a few months back. She was standing near the drinks table, and we just clicked instantly. I remember thinking she was way out of my league, with those bright blue eyes and this contagious laugh that made everyone around her smile. We exchanged numbers that night, and I texted her the next day, which I normally don't do. I usually wait a bit longer. But something about her just made me want to talk to her immediately. Our first real date was at a local Italian place downtown. Nothing fancy, but the food was good, and the conversation was better. She told me she loved hiking and spent most weekends exploring different trails. I'm not much of an outdoorsy guy myself, mostly just hit the gym a few times a week, but the way she talked about being in nature made me want to try it. She had this way of making everything sound exciting. After a few more dates, things got pretty serious between us. We made it official, and I introduced her to my friend group. They all thought she was great, especially my best friend Ryan, who kept saying I'd finally found a good one. My mom even liked her, which is saying something because my mom doesn't warm up to my girlfriends easily. About a month and a half into dating, Sarah invited me to a work event. Nothing major, just drinks after work with her team. That's where I met Jake for the first time. He was a coworker of hers, some kind of project manager or something. Tall guy, gym rat type, with one of those smiles that seemed to be too perfect. I noticed right away how he and Sarah had this weird energy between them. Nothing I could really put my finger on, just the way they seemed to have all these inside jokes and how they'd finish each other's sentences. Sarah said they'd been working together for about a year on various projects. I didn't think much of it at the time. I mean, people have work friends, right? But looking back, I should have paid more attention to how she lit up when he joined our conversation, or how she laughed a little too hard at his jokes. After only 3 months of dating, Sarah and I decided to move in together. I know that sounds fast, and it was. My buddies warned me about it. Ryan specifically told me I was moving way too quick, but Sarah and I were spending every night together anyway, so it just made financial sense. Plus, her lease was ending, and my place was closer to her office. It seemed like the logical next step. The first few weeks of living together were great. We cooked dinner together, binge-watched shows, and she even got me to try yoga, which I hated but pretended to enjoy because it made her happy. But then things started to change. Sarah began working late more and more. At first it was once a week, then twice, then almost every day. She'd come home looking tired but kind of wired at the same time, if that makes sense. When I'd ask about her day, she'd give vague answers about project deadlines and team meetings. She mentioned Jake's name a lot. They were apparently partnered on some big client account that required a lot of overtime. I try to be understanding. I know how work can get sometimes. My job in IT can have late nights too when systems go down, but something felt off. Then came the weekend I had planned as a surprise. I booked this cabin by a lake about 2 hours away. She'd been talking about getting away from the city, so I thought it would be the perfect break for her. I even coordinated with her friend Amy to make sure Sarah didn't have any plans that weekend. But the morning we were supposed to leave, Sarah got a work emergency text and said she had to go to the office. I was disappointed but told her I understood. I even offered to reschedule the trip, which she agreed would be better. Later that day, I was checking our shared cell phone account online to pay the bill when I noticed Sarah had received multiple calls from the same number that morning, Jake's number. When she came home that evening and I asked how the emergency went, she was vague again, mentioning something about server issues, which made no sense since she works in marketing, and quickly changed the subject. That's when things really started to change. Sarah became super protective of her phone. She'd take it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. She turned it face down when we were together on the couch. She even changed her password, which she claimed was for work security reasons. I'm not the jealous type, honestly. I've never been one to check a girlfriend's phone or worry about who she's talking to. But all these little things were adding up, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. About a month ago, I noticed Sarah had bought new underwear. Not just regular stuff, but fancy lace things I'd never seen before. And she started doing her makeup differently for work, wearing perfume when she usually didn't bother for the office. Little things, but noticeable to someone living with her. I finally decided to say something. We were eating dinner one night, and I just straight up asked her if there was something going on between her and Jake. The way she reacted told me everything I needed to know. She got instantly defensive, accusing me of being paranoid and jealous. She said Jake was a colleague and friend, nothing more, and that I needed to trust her. She even turned it around on me, saying I was trying to control her, which has never been my style. We had our first real fight that night. Not just a disagreement, but a full-blown argument with raised voices and slammed doors. She slept on the couch, and things were tense for days afterward. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. Maybe work was really stressful. Maybe I was reading too much into things. Then, about a week ago, Sarah told me she was going on a weekend camping trip with her girlfriends. Amy and a few others from college were planning the girls' getaway in the North Woods. She was vague about exactly where they were going, something about a campsite near a lake, but she couldn't remember the name. She said cell service would be spotty, so I shouldn't worry if I didn't hear from her much. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but something just felt wrong about the whole thing. The day after she left, Amy texted me asking if Sarah was free to grab coffee. They hadn't seen each other in weeks, and she figured Sarah might have time that morning. That's when it hit me. Amy wasn't on any trip. She hadn't even talked to Sarah in a couple of weeks. Sarah and I have location sharing turned on our phones. We set it up when we first moved in together as a safety thing. I checked her location, expecting it to be turned off, but it wasn't. She was at some remote spot in the woods, all right, but it wasn't any public campground. Her pin was right on top of a marked private cabin listed on Google Maps. I even looked it up. Definitely not a shared campsite. It was a private cabin area about 2 hours north of our city. I spent the whole day feeling sick to my stomach. Should I confront her? Drive up there? Wait until she got back? I decided to wait. I needed time to process what was happening and what I was going to do about it. That evening, the weather took a nasty turn. A thunderstorm warning popped up on my phone for the area where Sarah was. Not unusual, we get random storms all the time around here, especially in the woods up north. 1 minute it's sunny, the next you're getting drenched. I figured it was just another passing storm. I texted her a heads up just in case, but she didn't respond. I tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. I told myself it was probably just the bad service she mentioned, but I was worried. Despite everything, I still cared if she was safe. I was sitting on her couch, mindlessly flipping through TV channels when my phone rang around 10 p.m. It was a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a woman identified herself as a nurse from North Regional Hospital. There had been an accident. Sarah had been admitted after a lightning strike. I didn't know Jake was involved until I got to the ER and overheard one of the staff mention his name. They'd been struck by lightning while hiking in the woods during the storm. The nurse said Sarah had given them my number as her emergency contact. She was stable but injured. Burns, some trauma from the fall, and they were monitoring her for cardiac issues, which apparently can happen with lightning strikes. Jake was in worse shape, in the ICU. The bolt had hit closer to him. Hearing Jake was in the ICU left me cold. Not out of hate, just exhaustion. I didn't have room to feel anything for him. I don't remember much of the drive to the hospital. 2 hours of autopilot, my mind racing between concern for Sarah and anger about the betrayal. When I got there around midnight, they directed me to Sarah's room. She was awake, hooked up to monitors, with bandages on her right arm and shoulder where the burns were worst. The look on her face when she saw me, I'll never forget it. Shock, shame, fear, all mixed together. She started crying immediately. Through tears, she admitted everything. She and Jake had been having an affair for almost 2 months. It started with late work sessions and drinks after, and it just happened. They'd been meeting at his place mostly, but he'd borrowed his friend's cabin for the weekend as a special getaway. She swore it was just physical at first, but she's developed feelings for him. She said she was confused about what she wanted and had been planning to talk to me after this weekend. The lightning strike happened when they were hiking to a lookout point. They'd ignored the weather warnings, thinking they had time before the storm hit. She kept crying about how sorry she was, how the universe was punishing her, calling it karma. And honestly, I don't know, but something about the timing felt off. Like the storm didn't just happen, it was sent. Not by me, but by something bigger that couldn't let them enjoy a single second of that weekend. I just stood there, numb. I wanted to yell, to demand answers, but nothing came out. I think some part of me shut down in that moment. Maybe it was shock, or maybe I just didn't have the strength to rage anymore. I walked out. I spent an hour in the hospital cafeteria, trying to decide what to do. In the end, I went back to her room, to where I would come back the next day, and drove to a nearby motel for the night. I couldn't process everything while looking at her in that hospital bed. The next day, I went back to the hospital in the afternoon. Sarah was more alert, and we had a longer conversation. Jake was still in the ICU, with his parents at his bedside. Sarah tried to explain herself more, saying she'd been feeling lost in our relationship, that things had moved too fast, that she cared about me but wasn't sure if it was love. I mostly just listened. What was there to say, really? I made my decision during that conversation. I told Sarah I would be packing her things from our apartment and leaving them with the hospital staff for when she was discharged. I didn't yell or call her names. I just said I deserved better than this, and so did she. She cried and asked if we could talk more when she was out of the hospital, but I told her I needed a clean break. I drove back to our apartment, my apartment now, I guess, since I was the one on the lease, and spent that evening boxing up her stuff. It was harder than I expected, seeing all these reminders of our relationship, knowing it was all based on lies. I blocked her number and removed her from my social media. I needed space to heal without her trying to explain or apologize anymore. A few days later, Sarah's mother called me. I hadn't even met her before. Sarah said they weren't close, but somehow she got my number. She basically begged me to reconsider, saying Sarah was going through a trauma and needed support. She tried to downplay the cheating, saying people make mistakes when they're young. I explained as politely as I could that while I hoped Sarah recovered physically, I couldn't be the one to support her through this. The betrayal was too fresh, too deep. Her mother called me cold and hung up. Through mutual friends, I heard that Jake had regained consciousness after being in critical condition for about a week. He had some neurological issues from the strike, trouble with fine motor skills, memory problems, that sort of thing. Sarah was discharged from the hospital but had nowhere to go since I'd packed up her things. Apparently, she moved in with a coworker temporarily. She tried to reach out through friends, asking to talk, but I wasn't ready. I started seeing a therapist to deal with the whole mess. I've never been the type to talk about my feelings much, but the situation was too much to handle on my own. The betrayal, the bizarre way it all came to light, the mixed emotions of wanting her to be okay physically while still being incredibly hurt by her actions. It was a lot to process. My therapist says I'm dealing with a form of trauma too. Not just from the relationship ending, but from the shocking way it all happened. Who has their cheating girlfriend get struck by lightning, right? It sounds like some weird cosmic justice, but it doesn't feel that way. Despite everything she did, I wouldn't wish that kind of injury on anyone. The worst part is the nightmares. I keep dreaming about the storm, the lightning, even though I wasn't there. In my dreams, I'm watching it happen, unable to move or warn them. Sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing. The therapist says this is a normal response to trauma, even secondhand trauma, but it doesn't make it any easier to deal with. My friends have been great through all this. Ryan comes over a lot, makes sure I'm eating, drags me out to play basketball or grab a beer when I've been holed up in the apartment too long. My sister calls almost every day to check on me. I'm lucky to have people who care. The apartment feels empty now. I've been thinking about looking for a new place, somewhere without memories of Sarah. I haven't decided yet. Part of me wants a fresh start, but another part feels like moving would be letting the situation control my life even more than it already has. Work has been a welcome distraction. I've thrown myself into projects, stayed late, volunteered for extra assignments, anything to keep my mind occupied. My boss has been understanding, giving me some flexibility with hours when I needed it for therapy appointments. It's been about 3 weeks since the lightning strike. I haven't spoken directly to Sarah since that day in the hospital, though she's tried to reach out multiple times through different channels. I'm not ready to talk to her, not sure if I ever will be. What would be the point? Our relationship was built on lies. You can't rebuild trust once it's broken that badly. Some of our mutual friends think I'm being too harsh, that I should at least hear her out. But they didn't have their world turned upside down like I did. They didn't have to drive to a hospital in the middle of the night to find out their partner of 6 months had been having an affair. They haven't had to question every memory, wondering what was real and what wasn't. I've been doing a lot of thinking about red flags I missed or ignored. The way she would get texts and smile at her phone but never share what was funny. How she'd bring up Jake's name in conversation but then quickly change the subject. The weekends she was too tired to do anything with me, but somehow would find energy for after-work drinks with colleagues. It's all so obvious in hindsight. My mom always says everything happens for a reason. I'm not sure I believe that, especially not about something as random as a lightning strike, but I do think sometimes you get clarity in the strangest ways. If that storm hadn't happened, how long would Sarah's lies have continued? Would she really have broken things off with me after their weekend away, or would the affair have just gone on and on? The strangest thing in all this is that I feel almost grateful, not for the pain of the betrayal, but for the truth. As horrible as this all is, at least I'm not living a lie anymore. At least I found out who Sarah really is before things went any further. We could have been together for years, maybe even gotten married, all while she was capable of this level of deception. I still have questions that keep me up at night. Did she ever really care about me? Was it just convenient? How long had she been planning this weekend getaway? But I'm trying to accept that I might never get those answers, and even if I did, they may not make me feel any better. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time. Some days are better than others. Sometimes I can go hours without thinking about Sarah or the affair or the lightning. Other days, it's all I can think about, replaying conversations in my head, looking for clues I missed. My therapist says this is normal, that grief isn't linear, and betrayal is its own kind of grief. I've started hiking, ironically enough, not because of Sarah, but because I need to get out of my head sometimes, and being in nature helps. Just local trails, nothing too ambitious. It's peaceful, and it gives me time to think without distractions of home or work. I'm trying to reclaim the activities that remind me of her, make them my own again. One thing's for certain, I'll be more cautious in my next relationship. Not distrustful exactly, but more aware of the warning signs. I don't want to carry this baggage forever, but I also don't want to be blindsided like this again. I'm trying to look forward now, not back. One foot in front of the other, one day at a time. Edit. For the people asking, this happened just outside of Duluth, Minnesota. Storms roll up fast in there, especially near the lakes and wooded areas. Lightning strikes during hikes aren't unheard of. It's actually a known risk in that region. I know the timing sounds wild, but trust me, in that part of the state, weather can turn on you in seconds. As Sarah later told me in the hospital, she and Jake had been hiking to a scenic lookout point where the storm rolled in faster than expected. They were in an open clearing far from any tree cover, both carrying metal hiking poles for the rocky trail. Despite the darkening sky and distant thunder, they kept going, thinking they could beat the weather. The lightning struck without warning, drawn to the poles in their exposed position, leaving them both crumpled on the ground. It was a reckless choice, she admitted, one that made the strike feel less like an accident and more like inevitability. As for the location sharing, she probably forgot we had it enabled since we set it up months ago for safety, and I never brought it up. Wow. First off, I just want to say I'm really sorry you went through all of that. The worst part is, you sound like you genuinely tried. You listened to your gut, but gave her the benefit of the doubt. You planned thoughtful things, made compromises, adjusted to her interests, even tried yoga. What really gets me is that she is ready to maybe come clean only after her secret getaway. Like, she just needed one more romantic weekend with the other guy before having the talk. That says a lot about where her head was at. Update 1. First of all, thanks for all the support for my previous post. I wasn't expecting so many responses, and I really appreciate everyone who took the time to comment or DM me with advice. It's been a roller coaster these past few weeks. After my last post, I spent several days just processing everything. The whole situation felt surreal. Finding out your girlfriend is cheating when she gets struck by lightning while doing it is not exactly covered in relationship advice columns. I know some of you thought I made this up, but I wish I had that kind of imagination. After about 2 weeks of complete silence between us, Sarah started sending messages through mutual friends. At first, I ignored them. I was still angry, still hurt, and honestly still trying to get through each day. But she was persistent, sending notes almost daily saying she needed to talk to me, that she had changed, that the lightning strike had given her a wake-up call or whatever. Eventually, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my workplace. I figured a public place would keep things civil, and I could leave whenever I wanted if things got too intense. When I saw her walk in, I almost didn't recognize her. She had this visible scar running down the side of her neck and disappearing under her shirt collar. From the lightning, I guess. She looked thinner, paler, and her usual confidence was gone. For a moment, I felt bad for her, but then I reminded myself why we were in this situation in the first place. She started crying almost immediately, which made me uncomfortable since we were in public. She kept saying the lightning strike was karma for what she'd done to me, that she'd been shown how quickly life could end, and how she'd wasted her second chance if she didn't make things right with me. I mostly just listened. What could I really say? Glad the universe zapped you for cheating on me? When she finished, I told her I appreciated her apology, but that some things can't be undone. Trust is one of those things. She begged me to give her another chance, saying near-death experiences change people. Maybe they do, but they don't change what already happened or how I feel about it. I left that meeting feeling drained, but also more certain that I'd made the right decision in ending things. The whole karma talk actually bothered me. It felt like she was using that accident to somehow clean her slate, like getting struck by lightning absolved her of the choice she made to cheat. A few days later, I heard from our mutual friend Chris that Sarah had been telling people I abandoned her during a medical crisis. She was apparently playing up the victim angle, saying I couldn't handle her injuries and bailed when she needed support. That made me furious. I hadn't contacted any of our mutual friends to explain my side. I'm not one for relationship drama, but now I was getting looks of disapproval from people who only heard her version. The craziest part of this whole saga came when a woman named Lisa reached out to me on social media. She introduced herself as Jake's girlfriend. Yeah, you read that right. The guy Sarah was cheating with was himself cheating on someone else. Lisa had found out about everything when Jake was hospitalized, and his phone was full of messages from Sarah. We met up for coffee at a different place than where I met Sarah, and she filled me in on her side. Apparently, Jake and Lisa had been together for almost 2 years. She had no clue about the affair with Sarah. We compared timelines and realized both of them had been lying to everyone for months. Lisa was devastated but also angry, especially since Jake was now requiring extensive care and she felt obligated to help despite the betrayal. The whole meeting with Lisa was oddly comforting. Misery loves company, I guess. We both felt less crazy knowing we weren't missing obvious signs. Both Jake and Sarah were exceptionally good liars. We've kept in touch since then, not romantically or anything, just as two people dealing with similar betrayal. Things took an even weirder turn when Sarah started leaving gifts on my doorstep. At first, it was normal stuff. A plant, a book I'd mentioned wanting to read months ago. Then the notes started getting strange. She wrote about how the lightning was divine intervention, meant to bring us back together, how the universe had cleansed her and given her a second chance with me. I'm not a religious person, but this felt borderline disturbing. I was considering a polite but firm message asking her to stop when I received a letter from Jake. It was clearly written with help. His handwriting was shaky, and parts were typed. He apologized for the affair and explained things Sarah hadn't told me. Apparently, she had pursued him aggressively, not the other way around. He claimed he'd tried to break it off several times, but she threatened to tell Lisa everything if he did. I have no idea if that's true, or if he's just trying to save face. But it did match the controlling behavior I'd started to see from Sarah toward the end of our relationship. The situation escalated when Sarah showed up at my workplace unannounced. My office has security, so she couldn't actually get to my floor. But she caused enough of a scene that my boss pulled me aside to ask if everything was okay. Thankfully, he was understanding when I gave him a condensed version of events, but it was embarrassing and unprofessional. That weekend, I talked to a lawyer friend who recommended I send Sarah a formal cease and desist letter. I was hesitant. It felt extreme, but the behavior was getting more concerning. The letter was delivered the following week, and things were quiet for a few days. I thought maybe she'd finally gotten the message. Then her behavior took an even stranger turn. She started telling our mutual friends that the lightning had given her special abilities. She claimed she could sense my thoughts and feelings, that we were cosmically connected now, and that's how she knew I still loved her despite what I was saying. Friends who previously sympathized with her started to worry about her mental state. Everything came to a head on Halloween night. I came home from a friend's party to find Sarah sitting on my front porch in the pouring rain. She wasn't wearing a jacket, just soaked through, and when I approached, she started rambling incoherently about how she and Jake shouldn't have been in the sacred part of the woods, and that the spirits were angry with them for desecrating my special place. This scared me, honestly. I'd never mentioned any special place in the woods to her. I had no idea what she was talking about, and she was clearly not well. Despite everything, I couldn't just leave her sitting in the rain in that state. I helped her into my car and took her to the emergency room. The doctors did a psychiatric evaluation and kept her for observation. They contacted her parents, who I'd never met during our relationship, and they came right away. The hospital staff explained to them and me that lightning strike survivors can experience various psychological effects, including PTSD, personality changes, and in some cases, delusional thinking. Combined with the emotional trauma of the affair exposure and our breakup, it was likely all too much for her to process irrationally. I spent some time talking with her parents in the waiting room. They thanked me for bringing her in and apologized for her behavior. They seemed like nice, normal people, which made me wonder about Sarah's claim that they were estranged. Just another lie, I guess. While all this was happening with Sarah, I also learned through Lisa that Jake was making some recovery progress. He'd regained more function in his arms and legs, but was having trouble with memory and experiencing seizures. Lisa was conflicted about staying with him through recovery given the affair, but felt guilty about leaving someone in this condition. I understood her dilemma all too well. After Sarah was released to her parents' care, she sent me a more coherent, typed letter of an apology. Her therapist had apparently suggested writing it as part of her healing process. It was the first communication from her that didn't mention cosmic connections or karma, just a straightforward acknowledgement of the pain she caused and a promise to respect my boundaries going forward. I didn't respond to the letter, but it did ease my mind somewhat. If she was getting professional help and recognizing reality again, maybe the harassment would stop. The strangest coincidence happened a week later. I was at physical therapy for an old shoulder injury that had been flaring up, probably from stress, and I ran into Jake. He was there for his rehabilitation from lightning injuries. We had this incredibly awkward moment of recognition across the waiting room. The receptionist called my name first, saving me from having to decide whether to acknowledge him or not. After my session, he was still there and I couldn't avoid him on my way out. We had a brief, stilted conversation. He seemed genuinely confused about some details of our situation, mentioning that his memory of the affair and the lightning strike was spotty. He apologized in a general way, but I got the impression he didn't fully remember the extent of what had happened. That must have been its own kind of hell, knowing you did something terrible but not remembering the specifics. Toward the end of the month, Sarah's mother called me. She thanked me for getting Sarah help and shared something interesting. Apparently, Sarah had been behaving strangely even before the lightning incident. Nothing as extreme as her recent behavior, but concerning mood swings and impulsivity that weren't typical for her. She wondered if Sarah might have been dealing with undiagnosed mental health issues that contributed to her affair and were now exacerbated by the trauma. I didn't know what to make of that information. I didn't excuse the cheating, but it did add another layer to the whole mess. Around this time, I decided I needed to move forward with my life. A friend set me up with his coworker, Allison. I was hesitant at first, but the thought of dating again felt exhausting. But we hit it off surprisingly well. On our first date, I gave her a very abbreviated version of my recent breakup. She was understanding and didn't press for details, which I appreciated. We went on a few more dates and things were going well. It felt good to laugh again, to have normal conversations that didn't revolve around betrayal or lightning strikes. Allison is straightforward and honest, which is exactly what I need right now. Unfortunately, Sarah somehow found out that I was seeing someone new. Maybe a mutual friend told her, or she saw something on social media even though I'd blocked her. She started texting me again, saying I was making a huge mistake and that Allison couldn't possibly understand our connection. The text became increasingly frantic, insisting we were destined to be together and that she wouldn't let me throw away our cosmic bond. I didn't respond to any of these messages, just documented them in case I needed to take further legal action. I'm trying not to let this latest development affect my new relationship, but it's hard. Allison knows something's going on, and I'll probably need to give her the full story soon if things continue between us. So that's where things stand right now. It's funny how quickly people can go from remorseful to manipulative when they don't get the outcome they want. But it's good to hear you're starting something new with someone who seems genuine. You absolutely deserve that. Don't let Sarah's reappearance shake your confidence in building something healthy again. You've already shown you're capable of seeing red flags and standing your ground. When you start dating someone new, how much of your past do you actually share? Like, do you lay it all out or keep some stuff to yourself? Let us know in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you next time.